By the end of this video today, you'll have a better understanding of how to use components inside of Cwicly. Here's what we're going to do. This is the final result of today's video, where we have these components here that are called card. And for each component, if we click on it, we have two styles. The first style is this here, where they're center aligned. All the icons have a squared background with rounded corners. They're all the same color across. But we also have this second style for the component where it's left aligned. The icon is in a circle and the icon has a border around it. And the way that this would work in practice, if we were designing our website, we would come in here in Cwicly and then click components and then click to insert our card. And then here with our card, from the drop down, we can choose if we want it to be centered, so style 1, or style 2, left aligned. Let's say we want to run with this here, left aligned. Then we have the properties here for the component to customize it. So here, let's change the icon color to the green, the border color to this lighter green, and then the background color to this pale green. For the text, I will say web design, get a great website here, contact us today. And to change the style, we could click here and go back to style 1 if we preferred this. We can also hide the icon, and that is across both of the styles. If we turn it on, we can also change the icon. So here we could change this to a heart. In practice, we probably want to put this into a grid of some sort. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll click here and we'll insert a section. And then inside here, let's insert some columns. And we'll do a 3-column grid. And we'll get our card and drag it into this first column. And I'll just zoom out so we can easily see what we're doing here in the editor. Then we could go to components and add another card into this second column. We probably want these to match, so we could click here and change this to style 2. And then let's change the icon to be a home. And then we can customize the color. So let's make this red. And the border color could be that red, but just a little bit lighter. And then the background color could be a very pale red. And this could say SEO services. And in practice, we would probably just start duplicating. So we'll just copy that card there, paste that in there, and adjust as needed. So this could be graphic design. And this one we might set as our yellow, which is our default. So if I just get rid of that and change the icon to a star, and then on our columns, we set 2 rems for row gap and 2 rems for the column gap. Publish. And on the front end, we have these feature cards looking really good. But maybe we want this type of styling for one part of our website, but in another section on another page, we want to have style 1. So let's go ahead and do that. So imagine this is a new page. If we get rid of that, we come in here, we add a section. Then inside here, we'll add some columns. And it's going to be a 3-column grid. And I'll just zoom in again. And then inside of this column, let's add our card component like that. We're going to leave it as this style 1, which if we click, it's by default style 1. So then let's just duplicate this and put that in the second column, and then duplicate again, put that in the third column. Then click to edit each component. So let's just change this to the heart. This one here will change to the home. This one here will change to the star. Adjust the text. And then on our column, add 2 rems row gap, 2 rems column gap, save. And now using that one component on one part of our website, it looks like this. But then on another page, that same component has been styled to look completely different. Now, if we just get one of these components and pull it out and delete everything else on the page, let's break down how it works so that you can understand what we're going to set up and what you can hope to learn from today's video. So firstly, we will be creating the component. And then if we go to modify, we can see everything inside of this component. So for this component, we have the 2 styles defined here. And then under here, we have all these properties, which I'm going to show you how to set up in today's videos. Properties are those dynamic values that change between every instance of the component. So things like the icon, we want to be able to change on a per component basis. The color of the icon, the heading here, the text, all of those are properties here. Then these 2 styles here are what show when you insert the component onto the page. The drop down here, they're those 2 styles. And this is changing the CSS behind the scenes. So if we go modify, and we have our card here. If we go to design, we select our style from up here. So let's just say I want to edit the centered one, so style 1. Any changes that I make down here in the interface are saving the CSS for this one style. And then when we go to style 2, we start changing the CSS down there, and that's saving the CSS for style 2. And so when we go to our component and we change the drop down here, it's getting that CSS for that style. So So I'm going to show you how to do that. We also have the ability to turn the icon on or off. So if we turn that off and we turn that on, and if we go into modifying the component and click on the icon wrap, under the primary tab, component settings, we have a visibility property. And if we click, there it is there. That is a property type, visibility. And so when you have that set and you're on one of these components, then you get that toggle where you can turn off and on. So I'm going to show you how to set that up in today's video. And you could do that for any block inside of your component. So if you wanted to take this one step further after today's video, you could add a button into this component. So if we just quickly did that here inside of our cart, we could insert a button and we could say, click me. And I could give it my button class that I've set up in my website. And then here under visibility, we could click and add a new visibility property. And we could call this show button and click connect. So now that toggle for this is controlling whether or not this block gets output for that. So if we exit out of this and then exit out of modifying our component, if we click on here and go down, we now have another toggle. And if we go hidden, it hides that block. If we go visible, it shows that block. So if we kept that visible and we had, say, 3 of them on our website, we now have a call to action component to our card. Now, there's a lot more that we cover in today's video, and I can't cover it all here in the intro. It'd just be too long. So let's start getting into this and starting to create this component. In today's video, we're going to be creating a Cwicly component with 2 different styles, and it's going to be for a card. So this is going to be our card here, and this is going to be style 1, where we have the icon, the heading, and some text there. And then we're just going to take this component and do a variation of it, another style, where it can be laid out like this, where it's the same elements, where you have the icon, the heading, and the text, but they're on the left-hand side. If I do a split screen here, like so, there's some other variants like this. We can also see that the icon is squared with rounded corners over here in style 1. Style 2, we will do a circle. We'll also be able to set the color over here. So we have varying colors where we have blue, yellow, green, and purple, where style 1 over here, it's all the same color. So we're going to go ahead and set that up as well. So let's start with creating a component and doing style 1, which is this one here. Here on my website, let's add a new page and begin creating our component. So let's get the HTML structure in place first. So let's add a block and we're going to add a div. And then inside this div, let's go ahead and insert an icon over here. Then under that, we're going to insert a heading. And then under that, we're going to insert a paragraph. And over here, I'm going to rename this div to card. That's just for the admin area. It doesn't affect the output on the front end. And before we forget, let's click on our heading. And then over here, let's change it from a H1 to a H3. I am zoomed in here, so I will scale this down so we have a bit more room to move. So I'm going to set this to 80%. And doing this only affects the scale here in the editor, but on the front end, it would be 100%. Now, reviewing our card here, I am thinking we should put the icon in a wrapper, a div, so that we could style it. So here, I'll right click on the icon and wrap, and we'll put that into a div. So with all our HTML elements here, we can now convert this to a component. So to do that, I'll click here and right click and say create component. Another way that you can do it is just click on the block, and then over here is the icon for create a component. Within the Cwicly interface, these 4 diamonds, that is what Cwicly shows is related to a component. So you'll see that throughout the interface. So here I'll click create component, and here I'll call this card and click create. And now all our blocks are converted into a component. So if we go over to here and click modify, we can see all those blocks that are inside of this component. So now that we have all the different HTML elements inside of our component that we need to be able to build our card, let's go ahead and add properties to this component. So if we click on our component up here, under properties, we can add a new property, and this will be for an icon. And I will call this card icon. The default can be this icon, and we'll exit out of that. So now that we've created this property for this component, we need to map where that outputs. So here I'll click on my icon block, and then here under primary, I'll go to icon. And then we want to click over here. So you can see the component icon here, the 4 diamonds. So if I click here, then I can select my card icon. Next, we'll create a property for our heading and then another property for our paragraph. You need to create properties for your component for things that are going to be dynamic and change for each instance of that component. So every time we drag this card component into the page, we want to be able to change what icon shows, what heading, and what paragraph. So if I click back on this component, this is where we created this icon here. So for the heading, we could click to add a new property, and this could be a text property. We could call this card heading. The default could say replace me. And then we could exit out of that and then click on our heading. And then here for content, we would click and then select our card heading and then click connect. And now that property is mapped to this. Another way that you can create properties instead of having to go and create the property here on the component and then click on the actual element and then click to map it that way is the following. You can just click on an element here. So the paragraph, we want to create a property. So over here for the content, we can just click and then go text and call this card text. And the default could be some lorem ipsum. And then we just click connect. And now that's mapped here already. So it's sort of like doing everything in the one step instead of two different steps. I prefer that way. So with our properties added to our component, I'll show you what that's achieved. So let's just say we're coming in here and we're building our website. We would go to components and then we would add our card component into our page. And with that in there, we could click here and we could change the icon by coming over here. So here, maybe we select font awesome and we do this love heart. Now, I did notice that that's not outputting. So if we go to modify and then click on our icon, I think it's because there's no size set here. So if we were to set this to 1 rem, now that's outputting there. Now we could actually create a property for our component to be able to set the size of the icon on a per component basis. So if we are here inside of editing our component, and I click on the icon, you get these dots here. And if we hover, we can see the component icon. And if we click and then click all properties, we should be able to find one of these properties that allows us to set a size. So maybe it's a value. So I'm just going to go through these. So number could be it. What else? Let's have a look. CSS text. Let's try number and then click plus. And this could be the card icon size. Let's set the default to 1 and then with unit. Okay, now that's updated. So this could be 1 rem, and now that would be the default. So minimum, maximum, and the step. Let's just leave them for now and click connect. And now we can see our love hearts showing there. So if we exit out of that and click back on our component, over here, card icon size, 1 rem, but can we change that to whatever we want? Okay, that's working. Can we go to a different unit? So let's just say 10 pixels. Okay, we have complete control there. So let's do 1 rem, and that would be the default. So if I exit out of that, it just resets to 1 rem, which is what we want. We probably want to move that up under there. So let's go back to modifying our component, and we should be able to just drag that up there. So now if we exit out of that and click back on our component, we set the icon, we set the size, the heading, and the card text. For editing those fields, you'd want to do the card icon and the card icon size over here in the panel, but the text you can edit inline over here. So for this card, we could say web design. I do web design, and then we could go ahead and duplicate that. And for our card 2, it could be SEO services. And we could have another card here, and this could be web development. And then for this, we could change the icon here, and we could do a plus sign. And then this one over here, we could change the icon there, and we could do a star. Now I'm thinking the icon size might be a bit small. So I wonder what happens if we click here and then go to modify. And then here for the icon size, we set its default to be 2 rem. It has updated all of them, which is pretty cool. So if we were to set that to 1.8 rem and then get out of that like this, that's looking pretty good. Now, having a look at our style 2 for our card, we want to be able to change the background color here and also the icon color. So we actually need 2 other properties here. So back here, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep things simple for now, so we'll just work with the one component and we'll go to modify, and then I'll click on the div here, and then under design and background, where the background color can be set, I'll click over here with the component icon and then click all properties, and we want to be able to set a color. So let's go through these and see if there is a color. There it is. So I'll click on that, and then we'll click add color, and we will call this card icon background. And the default, I'm going to set it to my light sand color from my global colors and click connect. And you can see that has been applied up there. Then let's click on our icon and we'll go to primary. And then here under colors, we'll click here on the component, and then we'll click all properties. And then here, it already knows we're trying to create a color property here. So we're already in here. So we can just say add color property, and I'll call this card icon color. And the default, I am going to set to my yellow color there and click connect. And now if we exit out of this and click back on our card, we now have those there. And let's reorder them again. So I'll go modify, and I'll drag these up the top just so it makes a bit more sense. So card icon, icon size, icon color, and then icon background, and then the text like that. So with the HTML of our component completed and all the properties added into our component, what we need to do now is create the styling that is common between our two card designs. So let's refer to this styling as our base styling for our component. So I can see that this is a rounded corner, the background is white, and there's a slight drop shadow, and it looks like it's the exact same drop shadow. And then we also have some padding around the card, and the padding seems to be the same. So let's go ahead and set that up. So here on our card, let's go modify, and then I'll click on our card wrapper. And then let's go to design and background, and then we'll set the background color to be white. Under borders, and then to shadows, let's add our shadow. So it's going to be an outer shadow. And here, and I'm not going to do the exact design here. This is just more about showing you how to create components. So let's just do the blue here, and then let's give it 1 rem of blur. Then here under borders, let's go to border width and add our rounded borders here. Now, normally I would use a custom property here. So something like my size M, but for today's video, let's just use rems. So I'll do 1 rem there all the way around. Now we can see that the icon is going over here. So we need to do an overflow hidden, I think, on the card. So with our card selected here, the div, let's go down to layout, and then here to visual, and then overflow, we will set that to hidden. And now we have the rounded corners up here. And then here under margin and padding, let's add some padding. Let's try 2 rem. Next, let's click on the heading. And I want this to stay as a H3 HTML element, but I probably want to scale it down a little bit to the size of a H4 font size in my website here. So if I click here to add a class and apply my H4 class and click create, you can see that scaled it down there. Just quickly, while filming this video, I had some gaps here from somewhere else inside of my website, but this is how it should be. So let's go ahead and add our gaps here to our card. So if we go to modify and then click on our card, right, we want to space these items out. So let's go to design and then layout. And then here we'll go flex direction column. And then for the row gap, let's make this 1 rem, maybe 0.5 rems. So comparing our two cards here, I think we're done with our base styles. So now let's go ahead and complete style 1 here for the card. So to create a style for the component, we will click on the component. And before we were creating properties, but now we're going to create styles. So I'll click to add a style, and this is going to be style 1 centered, and we'll add another style, and we'll call this style 2 left aligned. So when you create styles here for your component, if we exit out of this, if we click back on this component, you will see under style, you will see them as drop downs. And when you click to select a style here, the CSS changes for that component. Now, if we click through these, nothing's happening because we haven't actually changed what CSS gets applied between each of these styles. So let's go ahead and do that now. So with our card selected here, let's go modify, and then we'll click on card. And you can see you can't select anything from this drop down under primary and through the component settings here. But if we go to design, now we have the ability to see our styles there. So here I'm going to go style 1 centered, and with that up there, any CSS that we create down here using the Cwicly interface gets applied for that style. So let's start with centering everything. So under design, let's go to layout, and then down here we'll do flex direction column, and center align. Then we'll go up to typography and we will center the text. And now let's move on to our icon. So let's start with our icon, and then here under margin and padding, let's add some padding, and let's do 0.8. And then let's go to the wrapping div, and let's start with rounding the corners, 0.7 rems. And then let's go to layout, and just to be safe, let's do flex flex direction column, and then center and center. And by doing this, we're now ensuring that this icon will always be centered vertically and horizontally inside of this div. Now, because different icons can be different shapes, I think also it's worth doing the following by going to sizing, and then for the aspect ratio, setting it to be 1:1, which forces it to always be a square. Having a look at the card that we're recreating here, I want to add some more space here between the icon and the heading. And I'm also thinking for this component, we should actually have the ability to not set an icon, so make that conditional. So if there is an icon, we'll add more spacing before the heading. If there's no icon, then we don't need to add the spacing. So to conditionally show this icon, we need to do the following. With the div that wraps our icon selected, we want to go to the primary tab and then click on component settings. And then here for visibility, we will click and we want to create a new visibility setting. And now we're creating a new property for this component and its type is visibility. And here we're going to say show icon and we'll set its default value to be visible. And then let's click connect to map that property to the field down here. Then let's go into our component. And here under the settings and properties, let's drag that to be the first setting. Now let's click out of this and click back on our card. We now have this toggle to hide the icon or show the icon and make it visible. Now, when you choose hidden here, this actually does not render any HTML at all, which is exactly what we want. I just want to clarify that it's not doing a display none in the CSS. It is actually not rendering those blocks at all. So I'm going to set this to visible. Now let's add a margin top to this heading if the icon is present to add more space between here. So to do that, let's modify our component and then we'll click on this div here that wraps the icon and we're going to add a new global CSS class to it and we'll call this my card icon wrap and I'll rename this to icon wrap. And then here for the heading, let's add another CSS class and we'll call this my card heading and click create. So now we can use those two CSS classes to add our margin top conditionally. So to do that, we'll click on our div over here for the card and then we'll go to design and we want to apply this margin top logic to both styles of our card. So we want this to be a base style. So here I will select base and then under design, I'll go to relative styling and I will click plus. And then I will click here to make the rule. And let's name this rule margin top on heading. And the CSS rule, so we'll do the block class. So we're targeting this element here. And then inside there, we want to get the direct children. And then if a block with our heading class follows another block with our icon wrap, so if this follows that, then we want to add our margin top. So to do that, we'll get out of that. And then we can click into our relative style. And now we can use a Cwicly interface to add that CSS for that relative style, for that CSS rule. So if we go margin here, down here, we could add a margin top of 1 rem. Again, we're seeing that bug where we're updating it here, but it's not showing in the preview over here in the editor. But if we click out of editing the component, we can see that be added. So when we click on it, it's removed for some reason, but if we click off it, it is actually there and working. So now let's go ahead and duplicate this component there. And the first one, we will keep the icon. The second one, we will set the icon to be hidden. And then let's save this. And on the front end, you can see when the heading follows the icon, we have this extra margin here now on the heading. But if there's no icon, the heading does not get that additional space above it, which is what we want. So getting rid of this second card here, let's now take our component that we've just created and put it into a grid like this. And we'll do this from scratch. So let's close that down. And we firstly need to go and add a section block, which comes with a container. And then inside there, we want to add our columns, which is this block here. And it is a 3-column grid. So I'll choose this option to get the 3 columns. I'll click on our columns parent block. And I'm going to set this to auto grid. And what that means is if we go to the grid editor, I'm saying I want my grid to be divided horizontally across the row into 3 fractions. And each time we add a new column into the grid, it will just fall into one of these. So for example, if we get out of that, knowing that this is a 3 fractions grid, if I click here to add another column, it sits under there and it just follows that 3-column grid. So inside of this column here, let's add our component for the card and get out of that. And I'm going to zoom out here in the editor just so we have a bit more room to see. So I'm going to get this and copy, just Command C on my keyboard and paste it into each of these columns. So there, I'll paste it there, paste, 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 and paste. So now each grid item, each column has a card component inside of there. And then I'll click on the parent columns here and we'll add some gaps. So I'll do 2 rem for row and 2 rem for the column. So let's now save this. And on the front end, we're getting this result here. So we're missing the default icon for the globe on the front end, but in the editor, we are seeing it. And I think that's because on the admin area, it's loading the Font Awesome font. But on the front end, if it doesn't find any icons, then Cwicly is trying not to load the Font Awesome library to obviously reduce your page size. I was going to cut this out not to confuse people, but I think it's worth putting in. So the way that I fix that is if we click into our component and go to modify and then go to our icon, and then here we click to go to the icon property for the component. The default is set as the globe here, but we just need to click here and then choose Font Awesome 5 and then search for globe and then select it there. And now this has a blue dot and it's like we're manually setting a default. So by doing this, if we click connect and exiting out and updating this, if we come back and reload, it's showing now. But already you can see that this is starting to come together quite nicely. And because we're using the auto grid, it's already responsive out of the box and this is all working. So last thing we need to do is complete style 2, which is this. So back here, I'm going to collapse everything here and open up just this one so it's a bit clearer to see what we're doing. And then let's modify our component. Then let's go to our icon wrap and then over to design. And then up here, let's select to customize style 2. And then let's go to margin and padding and we'll set some padding. And then here for the borders, we want to make this completely rounded. So I'll just do something like 1000 pixels. And then we need to add this border. And we also need to be able to set the border color. So that border color is going to be a new property that we set up for the component. So here, let's firstly create the border and then we'll create that property to set the border color. So down here, the border, let's make it solid. Then we'll set the border width. And then here, because we see this dot, it means we can set the component settings. So here I will click to the component, again, the 4 diamonds, and then go to all properties and then create a new color property. And we'll call this property icon border color. And the default, I'm going to make my sand color here, but maybe soften it just a little bit and get out of that. And then click connect. Then coming onto our card, let's go to layout. And here we want to do the flex direction column, but we want to align flex start. And then under typography, we want to go down and align it to the left. Then let's go onto our card component. And then down here for the settings, the icon border color, let's just reorder that to make a little bit more sense and put that there and then click out of it. So with that done, if we collapse this first section could be where we have style 1 and we could duplicate that. And this second section could be style 2. Then if we go down a little bit inside of style 2, with our component selected here, we could just go and change that to be left aligned. And we could do that for all of these. So this one as well, and this one. And then for the first card component here, we could change the icon color to be this green color. The icon border color could be this green color, and the icon background could be the pale green. We could click to replace the icon and make it a star. And we could do the same for this one here. We could change the icon to be a home. The icon color could be this pinky red. The icon border color could be this lightened up just a bit. And then the icon background color could be this pale red. We can change the text. So this could be web design. This could be web development. This SEO services, graphic design, etc. We can begin to update the text and this one as well, and then save the page. And then on the front end, it looks like this. So there's style 1 and there is style 2. And to make the cards equal height inside of the grid, we can click on our card and then modify the component. And then on the div that wraps our card, we can go to design and then sizing and set its height to be 100%. And we'll save this. And now this is all nice, neat, and completed with them all the same size. To finish off this video, I thought it would be cool to take these card components and use Cwicly's grid editor to do a bit more of a crazy grid layout. So let's open up our second section here, and on our columns block, let's turn auto grid off. And by doing that, that allows us to then go into the grid editor and drag and drop our grid however we want. And what I'm thinking would be cool is to move that over there and make that stretch there. But then let's move that over there. 3 goes there. So alternating the widths of them as we go down the page. So let's close that and save this. And the end result of what we just did looks like that. Maybe not what you'd put on your website, but it does give you some ideas of some of the things that you can achieve with components inside of Cwicly's grid editor. If you want to learn more about Cwicly, I have all these videos here on my YouTube channel in a playlist dedicated to just Cwicly. But one of the best things about components in Cwicly is that you can nest one component inside of another one, which is very powerful. And this video here is going to show you exactly how to do that. So I'll see you in that video.